parent buttons. We then made sure that the Z order of stuff was right. We made sure that the background image was actually in the back. We made sure that the buttons were in the front so that everything is visible. We then went and we took that template and we applied it to all 4 of the pages that we currently know about in our sim, so that when we present this model, we can actually navigate between the various pages. And you'll notice that everything stays in the same spot and nothing looks like it's jumping around, all jaggy around on the pages. So this gives us the format now that we can actually go ahead and start putting our content together. I think let's start with the simple stuff. Because most of these pages, as we kind of laid them out, are all just graphs and tables. So we should be able to fly pretty much completely through market data, business data, product attractiveness. And it's just decisions where I think there's new stuff for you guys to learn. A lot of this now kind of gets repetitive. Alrighty. So I guess let's start with market data. And again, interrupt me whenever you feel like it, and whenever you have questions, or whenever you feel like I'm doing something wrong. At this point, we're out of what I had pre-planned, so I'm kind of making it up with you as we go. Alright, so here on our market data page, we had decided we wanted to use small multiples. And we wanted to show a bunch of profit and market share metrics. And we also wanted to show price, because that way, we kind of wanted to fool people into thinking that price was something that was really important. So let's go ahead and start putting that stuff together. Let's just start laying out graphs. And the easiest thing I find for creating things like this is rather than setting up the graph first, with all of the data, I get all of the styles right, all of the sizes right, and then copy and paste the graph as many times as I'm going to need it, so that I don't have to reset the 8 billion graph settings so many times. In a future release, I fix that problem by giving you a global graph style panel, but because we're in stuff that's currently available, we don't have that feature. Okay, so on this graph, we want to set it up. We needed, does somebody have the pictures that we made yesterday? Did anybody happen to screenshot those, the designs? I give you a thumb drive. Can you throw those pictures on them? That way I can refer to them. Max, you said you had them? Awesome. Okay. And that way I can remember, because I don't remember. My memory is not so good. Okay. So we wanted to do smaller graphs here. When we do small graphs, it's a pain in the ass. We lose so much space because of all of these labels. And I think we wanted to use a gridding system anyway, so we can chop off the title here. We can chop off the x-axis title by just typing in a space, I believe. What else can we chop off this graph? I guess we have enough labels here where it's not so tight. I think that something like that should actually be fairly legible. Okay. So now we've got that set up. We've got legends. Alrighty. So let's go and let's start throwing stuff on here. We wanted to put profit, I know, on this page. So the easiest way to create graphs, obviously, is the green plus. We can then filter through this list, which makes it really easy to find what we're looking for. We wanted to put profit broken down by just Nintendo, because obviously here at Nintendo we don't know what Sony's and Microsoft's profits are. And the star means we get both. So apparently all of this really helpful stuff that I do where I label your axes for you kind of gets in the way here. So let's go ahead and kill those labels by using a single space. Oh yeah, this gives me time to explain to you about some of the interesting settings that we have on these axes. We have these settings for multiscaling and autoscaling. So I'm just going to set this to multiscale for the moment and run. So when you check off that multiscale box, what it does is it does the old, I think, version 10 style scaling, where you actually have on a single y-axis multiple scales. Each of the labels is then colored according to the color of the series that is plotted. I find graphs like this hard to read. I like, if at all possible, to keep the scales on a single axis the same. So when you uncheck multiscale, now everything is plotted on the same exact scale. If you want to use multiple scales on a graph, I think the appropriate way to do that is to use this right axis checkbox. And when you do that, what it does is it pulls the variables apart. It puts on the left axis all of the variables where right axis isn't checked, and it puts on the right axis any variables where right axis have been checked. That way you could, for instance, have a graph where you plot the stocks and the flows on the same chart. The flows all use the scale on the right, the stocks all use the same scale on the left. You got to be careful with graphs like these because they tend to be hard to read, but if you organize them well, they can be pretty powerful because they let you kind of overlay two sets of behavior at the same time, even though they don't share the same scale. But the problem that we used to get, when we would multi-scale things, is you would end up with graphs that looked like this. And that's pretty much useless. You can't read that except for the shapes of the curves. So that's why multi-scaling, be careful with.
Can I ask about the legend? Is there a way, is there an option in the default where we can set it not to be so long? Like you have business, stock, profit, and then the...
Yeah,
right?
so let's fix our legend here. So let me go ahead and replot profit like I should be doing. Okay. And it's Nintendo both. Okay, and let me get rid of multi-scale here. Okay, so now we've got this really big, long, ugly legend. That means nothing to anybody. Probably means not even all that much to everybody here. So business is the name of our module, profit's the name of our variable, and then these are the array indices that we're plotting. So it would be a heck of a lot better if this just said on it, Nintendo, it said, Wii U and Nintendo Switch. So we can come in here and you'll see that based on what item you have selected in this table here, the legend title input box shows, and so we can call this first one the current generation Nintendo product is the Wii U. And then the next generation product is the Nintendo Switch. And so now, all of a sudden, our legend, rather than being this gigantic monstrosity, is pretty compact. We can control where the legend goes. So you can put it on the right, you can put it on the bottom. And something nice to know about is you can control all of this stuff for new models that you create. So if you go to Edit, Default Settings, we give you options that allow you to control what the defaults for your model will be. So it lets you, for instance, I find map view not very helpful. So I make sure that all new models I create are always in model view. I could change, for instance, all of the variable colors, all of the stock and flow colors. I could change, the default stock size, the default converter size. So a lot of people I know don't like the circles that we use for converters. They just want to see name only like you would see in VenSim. So you can just flip this over, and now every new model that I create, by default, all converters will be name only. Yeah. But in the graph, we have options around the size, all around the background colors, all of the text settings, as well as the legend position. So you can kind of control what all of your graphs will look like in the future. Like I said, coming in 1.2, the next version of this stuff, we actually have a panel in the default settings here, which lets you control all of the graphs or tables in your current model. So this all gets into something called the style system. Kind of getting a little off track, but it's worth it to know. So if we go back to the model layer here, you'll see that when we're in the model settings, we've got a couple of tabs here at the bottom. The first one here is for partial simulation. So if you're building a model that's inside of modules and you get one module to work first, but not the rest, you can just run that single module. You don't have to run your whole model. You can also use sector frames to do the same thing, to say just run this piece of my model, ignore the rest right now. This is sensitivity analysis. I think I have videos online that show how to do that. Simulation events, which we talked about on Monday. Don't worry about this is going away. And model styles. So model styles are really, really cool and useful. They let you change lots of things at once. The way that the style system works in Stella Professional and Stella Architect is that it cascades. So, the highest level of this waterfall is the default settings. When you change a default setting, that applies to all new models in the future. And we use that to initialize what your styles will be for that new model. Once you're in a model, you can change, for instance, the variable color. I can make them all green. And what it does is it actually changes every single variable in my model from whatever it used to be to this color. Now if I had, I'm going to undo that real quick here. So if I had taken this module and I had purposely made it red, I wanted to call out that this module was special. When I come back here to the model styles, and I come in and I make them all green, that one won't change. Because we've told it to be something different than the default, it stays whatever we told it to be. So this gets to be really useful if you all of a sudden you want to call out a specific element, and then you find out, what? Blue is really hard for one of my users to see. You can go back and you can change that to whatever color you want. We give you the ability to change that by stock and flow element as well. So stocks and flows, converters, modules, and sectors. You also have control over all of your variable fonts. So 9 might be small for a lot of people. We can make them all 14 with a single button press. So when you play with model styles like this, oh, I did fix that. Okay. I was about to say that they only apply to the current module that you're in, but they apply to the current module you're in and all subsequent models down the tree. So if you think of your model as a collection of submodels, a hierarchy of models, you have your root level up at the top. You then have, in this case, policy, market, business. If I change the styles up in root, it affects these three. Now let's say inside of policy I had thingamajig. If I change the styles inside of policy, it won't touch root, it won't touch market, it won't touch business, it will just touch policy and thingamajig. So it lets you control what things look like throughout sections of your hierarchical models. Same thing is how it works on the interface. So on the interface, at least for these graphs and tables, you do it through the default settings, and in the next version of the product you'll see that we'll have new tabs down here that allow you to control stuff for graphs and tables. And that will be really nice. The other big benefit to that is give you control over what these defaults are. So you'll get to choose that your default color is blue as opposed to me telling you it's always blue. And it won't necessarily go through dashed and dotted and all that stuff unless you want it to. Maybe, so I'm thinking actually that Thursday will be the last day of class. I'm thinking that we're going to end probably finishing the simulation by the break on Thursday. So maybe after the break Thursday we can talk about items that you as a class want to learn as a whole, so bring lined up questions. And if you guys have none, maybe I can show you some new stuff. Alright, so let's get back, I guess, to the job at hand now that I've gone on a tangent through a bunch of stuff that is not what we're trying to do here. Okay, so now we've got our profits here set up. And I guess we should label this graph because we aren't going to show any other profits on this page. So we put in our title. I think we wanted our profit to live somewhere around here. Thank you. Now we can figure out what we were doing. Okay, business data, market data. Oh, I guess we didn't want profit. Shows you how much and how well I can remember. Okay, so we wanted our 2 market shares, and then sales at the bottom, and then the 3 prices. Okay, so let's go fix this graph, and let's start with total sales. Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony. So let's go change this, and instead of saying business profit, we'll say market customers. No, we wanted sales. Market purchases. And we wanted Nintendo current and Nintendo next. Okay. Cool. And this isn't profit anymore. This is purchases. Right. Okay, we wanted then Microsoft and Sony. So we can take this, since we've laid it out really well, copy it, paste it, and paste it one more time. Copy paste is your best friend in the world. Use it as often as you can. So what I'm trying to do here is just kind of distribute stuff nicely on the page. I'm trying to make sure that I have an equal amount of space between the edges and the graphs. And now we can come through and we can change this. So here we go. Market, purchases. Let's do Sony. And let's fix this. Okay, so Sony is currently the PlayStation 4. And we'll assume that Sony will continue and call it the PlayStation 5. Okay, I guess we should probably change the name of our graph to be Sony. This will be Microsoft. Okay. Same thing, market, purchases, and then Microsoft, star. And let's call this one Xbox One. And who knows what Microsoft is going to call their thing, so we'll call it Xbox Next. I guess if Microsoft uses that name, I should demand some royalties. All right, so now we've got all of our purchases set up. What else do we have on this page? Our market shares, and then a listing of our prices. So let's start setting up our listing of our prices. So we're going to use the numeric display widget for that. The numeric display widget lets us see instantaneous values. It gives us no history, but it lets us label things. So here we're going to show console price, and we're going to show Microsoft current, and the title for this will be Xbox One price. And let's get this looking nice, because this looks a little too 1995 for my tastes. What I like to do with these is kill the color. So just set the color to the background color. and give them a little bit of breathing room. So the way that I killed the background color was just to come change the background color here in the style panel. And let's make this a bit easier to read. So fonts at size 9 are pretty good when you're on, a piece of software like this. If anything, they're a little bit on the small side. 12 or 14 is best if we can do it. Since we used size 14 for our navigation, switching to 14 here I think actually looks pretty good.
Can you repeat again, what is this thing you use?
This is called a numeric display. It's the thing that looks like a clock. It shows you just an instantaneous value of a variable at a single point in time for current time. So let's make a copy of this now. And what's nice about these things is they kind of stack up nicely. They look fairly good when you start putting them next to each other. Oh, I think I want some breathing room here. And I'm just going to make 6 of them since we have 6 prices. So what's really nice about this aligning to grid system, those dotted lines you see, is that they help you snap things together so that stuff lines up perfectly. If you ever find it to be annoying, which it could be in the case of trying to align images and things like that, up here at the top of interface settings, you can actually turn off snap to guides, and that'll make those guides go away. So that you can literally lay things out to the pixel without the software trying to tell you where they belong. So now we've got our prices set up. Let's actually label this kind of fake table we're making, because what we're really building here is something that looks like a table that isn't really a table. So let's put some labels on it so people know what we're talking about here. So this will be current generation console prices. And what I'm doing here is I'm getting the box to line up first. And once I get the box to line up, I can take this and start changing the way that it looks. So what I want to do here is I want to use something called the rich text editor. So I open my panel. I select the piece of text that I'm using. I come over here to the rich text editor, which means rather than using just plain text, that doesn't have any styles in it, I can use this, which allows me to be a little bit more precise about how my stuff is going to be laid out. And we can make this hopefully size 14, and we'll see what we get. Okay, we need a little bit more height. So what I did was I put down a text box, and I moved from plain text to rich text. So plain text is without any styles. The only way to impart styles to plain text is through the styles panel over here. With rich text, you're able to impart styles to individual, words within a statement. So I can make that bold. And now you'll see that that word alone is bold. It gives you a bit more control over what you're doing. The downside, what you lose by using the rich text editor, is these style settings start to really not do much that's useful and tend to clash with the settings that you've set up inside the rich text editor. So if you're doing rich text, as much as possible, do all of your styling here in the rich text editor. If you're using plain text, all of your styling can be done as a whole on the entire whatever you type here in the style panel.
Could you please repeat again, how did you do this, what did you insert in the numeric box?
So what I had originally put in here was a variable And I just put in console price. I'll go through because we need to fix the other 6 of them, or the other 5 of them, so you'll see in just a second. Okay, so let's take this, let's line it up. Alrighty, so now we need to go fix all these because right now we don't want to just show only Xbox One prices. So I double click, I then click the green plus, and I start typing in console price. I grab the one here. Now, what's interesting is you see this one with the little ghost symbol. So I ended up using console price as a variable inside of the business module. And so these two things are actually the same stream of values in this model. But the cool thing about modules is they don't have to be only used within this model. Modules, their entire original purpose was to be reusable. So you can actually build modules as separate models and import them into models so that you can use the same module in 2 or 3 or 4 different models. And in that case, there is a very big difference between console price in policy and console price in business. So when we set up our modules, we have what's called an input variable and an output variable. The input variable is the one inside the module that we're taking the data into. The output variable is the variable in the module that is set